say I'm making a whole lot of progress this week. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what industry I want to put down here. Now that I know that I'm going to use my propane tanks that I was thinking about putting down here at the chemical plant. And before I talked about putting this cement plant here. And as I look at it again, I'm going back to that. In between, I had been thinking about putting a lumber offload here, but I decided that that would take up more length than this really has for that to work the way I want it to. So I was back to the cement plant and kind of think I'm going to stick with this. I did think about putting a feed mill here. Elma did have at one point a feed, well, they still have the feed store, but they used to have a rail delivery to that building eons ago. I think I have a vague memory of a boxcar sitting there when I was a kid, and there was some sacks of feed in that. But there's no structure that really is a kit that even looks like that. So that would be yet another, major project. And maybe I'll do that at some point when I can actually, model that feed store the way that I think it should be modeled. In the meantime, I have this handy cement plant that's here and not being used for anything. So I've been tinkering with putting it here, having the cars, come off the main over back there, like I said before, having come down to a switch, slitting it out to 1 or 2 tracks, and I think I want 2 tracks there. And then I could have a local switcher that would come down and switch out the cement plant. I was also thinking about using this little building that I custom built a few years ago as as kind of the local office shanty, whatever you want to call it, for this industry. So that's where we are on that. On the chemical plant, I've been moving tanks around a little bit and kind of trying to get it the way I wanted to, and I'm waiting for some more parts to show up on that. The online train store that I bought the kit from is taking a long time to ship. And anyway, so that's where that is. I didn't get a lot of work done on the railroad this week, as I said before. I did build a couple of turnouts. You guys have seen my process on that, or at least parts of it before. Last weekend I went to see my mom, and while I was out that way, I got a couple of pictures of a neat train, and I thought I'd show that to you this week as well. Get you a little bit of a idea of the line that inspired my imagination as I was when I was a kid. So I was at the 4th Division Spring Meet, or I should say I was attending the Zoom meeting for it. And one of the gentlemen that was presenting was talking about uncoupling magnets. And it reminded me that I had done something on my old layout that might be kind of fun to demonstrate. I'm about to do so if I can time it right. There we go. Maybe just a little bit more. Okay, now I should be able to change direction on my throttle and pull away. Oh, nope. There we go. A little bit of practice. And what I've got here is some round magnets. Careful now, I'm gonna lift up the camera. I don't want you guys to get seasick. That I've embedded in the track right there in front of that car. And what those do is they make a KD coupler kind of separate. One of the glad hands will go one way and the other one will go the other way. And now I have automatic uncoupling. It's just that it's pretty picky about where. Those magnets I got from K&J Magnetics, and they're just a 1/8 by 1/8 inch, by 1/4 inch cylinder. That is a really, really strong magnet for its size. So those are what I put in between the ties on the track, and they barely fit. They do a pretty good job with this, though. The throttle I've been using tonight is the new Digitrax UT6D, which replaces the Digitrax UT4D. The old UT4D was like this, limited number of functions, and you couldn't consist with it. And it had these little dials up here for selecting your locomotive, which I always found to be cumbersome because I have fat fingers. And then the new one has bigger, better buttons, a color display. It still retains the best features of the UT4, which is this nice big knob up here for controlling the speed of your locomotive. That was the screen just timing out. The toggle also it has, so you can click back and forth. This is the wireless version, but if you still want to plug it in, there's a port on the bottom. If you buy the additional and optional BP 600 mAh, it's a nickel metal hydride rechargeable battery, at least I think it's nickel metal hydride. Anyway, you can have a rechargeable battery built into this, or you can just use regular rechargeable batteries and replace them as you would any other ones. I like this throttle quite a bit. I mentioned the toggle switch. So the function of the toggle switch is basically forward and reverse. So right now, you'll notice there's a B on the screen at the bottom next to the 2. If I click that, it now says F and the locomotive starts moving. Previous speed step that was set to was 11. And so there it goes moving along. If I set it to 3 and then I click center, it brakes. If I click reverse, it goes back to 3 and speeds right back up to 3. Kind of neat for switching. A while back, I decided to experiment with some Dwarf Signals because I want those on my yard. And I bought these off of eBay. They don't look super great. You can see the wires out the back, but it was like, I don't know, 20 for like 10 of them or something, or 29 for 10. Anyway, we're gonna get dizzy here a little bit. So there's a Dwarf, and it's supposed to sit like this, but I'm not worried about it for purposes of testing right now. And I actually would have preferred to have ones that were red and green, but red and yellow is what I got. So if the tortoise moves, I've soldered it underneath, and so now we're on red. That's good. I'm gonna pause for a second. Okay, again, not real pretty right now, but this actually just is for testing purposes. So I've got these little connectors that I bought off of Amazon, and they're spring loaded, so they're pretty handy for testing like this. And they happen to have a set with 3. Unfortunately, you have to buy ones that have 2 and 3 in them, but I can use the 2s as well. for LEDs, this is good because they're going to have a wire for the yellow, a wire for the red, and a common wire as well. And so I've got the common wire in there, and I've got the yellow and the red, and I lucked out and I actually got those colors. I got the yellow to the yellow, that was amazing. And then the inputs 5, 6, and 7 on the tortoise are being used for the connection to the tortoise. 6 and 7 will get different, will either be off or on depending on the position of the tortoise. And then the other line for the DC comes in to connection number 5. And that allows us to have our dwarf signal lit. So now that I've experimented with this, you'll see there's a kind of a distribution area there in the back, and I'll actually run some DC voltage off of that, and each of the tortoises will have its own dwarf signal for the yard anyway. And so I need to do 4 of those for this end and 4 for the other end of the yard. So things were working good, and I went and glued this one down. And then of course, right after I glued it, it stopped working. That's Murphy for you. Some of you are probably familiar with Murphy. He seems to sneak up and get you every once in a while. And I know my friend Brian is very familiar with Murphy and his laws. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the power, put a little bit of glue on that, and use that clothespin to hold it where I want it while it dries. Well folks, I think I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to go ahead and finish editing and uploading this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. In the meantime, be safe out there.